welcome to Diverse Joy, a podcast and educational video series that infuses science, practical skills, and most of all, joy into diversity discussions. My co-host is the festive and snuggly Dr. William T.L. Cox.
And my co-host is the cozy, elfy, festive Dr. Amber Nelson.
Yay!
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays. Yes.
So, Amber, this holiday season, what is bringing you joy?
Yeah. So, as we are going into all of the holiday festivities, I am just reflecting on my family traditions around Christmas specifically. So when I was young, my mom worked really hard to create tons of traditions. Some of them stuck and some of them didn't. For instance, when we were younger, my mom used to do 25 days of Christmas, where every single day of the month of December leading up to Christmas, we would get a Christmas gift, and then we'd have a massive Christmas still. It was really fun. It was kind of like an Advent, but I don't think it was super sustainable for her. But there were a few years where we did that. But some of the things that did stick are one, which I think a lot of families do, is the matching pajama sets. And every Christmas we get matching pajama sets and we take pictures together. Well, the last few years I have forced my family to take pictures, but historically we haven't necessarily taken pictures, but now we take pictures together and we all wear our matching pajama sets together. We usually stay, now as adults, we stay at my brother's house because he's got the place that's the most centrally located for all of us and for all of us to stay. And then we have breakfast in the morning and it's lovely. And then the other thing that we do is that every Christmas Eve, so we get our pajamas on Christmas Eve. That's our gift that we open on Christmas Eve. And then my mom always gives us a new board game that we then open up and play together. So historically, my mom has not really liked board games so much. And so that's like the one time of year that she was like, okay, I'll play games with you. And she buys us a new board game and then we play. So she'll like do, one year was like all classic games like Trouble and Clue and, Sorry and things like that. And then other times she looks up like what's a new fun game that we can try and play together. And so out of that came one of our family favorite games, which is called Killer Bunnies. It's not particularly like well known, but it's super fun and our family plays it quite frequently actually now. So it's something that I look forward to every year, our little pajamas and our Christmas Eve tradition.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's so nice.
Yeah. And how about you? What's bringing you joy?
Well, my joy this episode also kind of relates to family traditions. So we also had a lot of traditions, including the kind of pajama sweat set sort of thing. And one thing that my parents did through all my childhood was advent calendars. So as longtime listeners might remember, I was born in Germany and spent a lot of my childhood in Germany. And so we had the little kind of chocolate advent calendars every single year. And my parents still send us some, not every year, I think, but many of the years as adults. And in a different way, the tradition has continued. Listeners might remember past guest Sandy Eichel. Mm-hmm. Sandy and their wife started giving Eric Roman and I the Star Wars Lego Advent Calendar.
Love.
Like they found it and gave it to us one year and we just loved it. And every single day we'd make the little Star Wars Lego thing and send them a picture. And then they did it another year. So it's kind of our tradition with them. So all 25 or 24 days in Advent, we do that. And that means we have now this collection of kind of Star Wars Christmas Legos. So they have like Luke Skywalker with a little Christmas sweater or R2-D2 with a little Christmas sweater. And so we have this little kind of Star Wars Christmas nativity scene.
I love it.
That we're slowly building and building and building.
Yeah.
That's my joy.
So great. I love it. It's so cute. Yeah, I got a little Lego, what was off-brand. It's like building blocks Advent set. But it's super fun. And
Blasphemy.
I know, I'm so sorry. It was a gift, but I loved it. And it was like a little stocking and little things that I like built. And it was a really nice mindfulness practice too, which I loved. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very nice. Very nice. All right. Well, so getting into kind of our primary discussion topic today is interesting, exciting topic, which is the mind-body connection. And Amber's going to tell us a lot of great things about it. But to start us off, I kind of had this example that I really liked from my research education, my PhD schooling. A lot of psychologists, cognitive scientists, and so on kind of only study like what your mind is doing, what your brain is doing without thinking about the rest of your body. Right. And for some research questions, that can be perfectly fine. But for many research questions, the body is really important for understanding these kinds of cognitive or emotional things, which is what you're going to talk more about. But the analogy that one of my professors made, Paula Niedenthal, was something along the lines of, studying the mind without thinking about the body is like studying a computer without knowing what the computer is supposed to do. So, for instance, it could be a computer that's in a tractor that helps a tractor run, or it could be a computer that's in an airplane that has different kinds of things to worry about, helping the airplane run. And so if we ignore the human body when we're trying to study the human mind, we're really missing a lot of important information. And I always really like that analogy. So when you wanted to talk about this, I was like, oh, I'll bring that in.
Yeah.
But so tell us, Amber, what's up with the mind-body connection?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I think that as I was sitting with the idea of our holiday episode and all of the things that we talk about, one, it can be really activating. We talk so much about joy, which is a huge antidote to all of the things that we discuss. And there's this other side that there's a lot of stress in that too.
The pressure to create that.
The joy. Pressure, right. The
like
pressure
your mom in the 25
Exactly,
days.
Right? And I'm just thinking about like holiday time for everyone, as it can be this time that paints this picture of this like perfect picture of holiday and lights and like joy and memory and sure. And also it is a time that creates so much stress, right? Parents trying to create memories. One of my favorite Christmas movies is Christmas Vacation, and it's all about this dad trying to make it like a perfect holiday and all of these memories and how stressful that can be. And I just thought, like, what better for us to do is to talk about how we can take care of ourselves and how we can center some wellness as we go through the holiday season and acknowledge all of the things that can come up when stress arises from and during because the other thing that happens during the holiday, not only just the stress of creating a picture perfect moment, but we're also around our families, and that can bring up all kinds of things too, right? And where we have conversations around identity and politics and faith and religion and belonging and all of those things, which can also cause a lot more stress and pressure on your system. So I really wanted to talk about, like I said, the mind-body connection and what that means and what we can do with that to center wellness and help us through this season. But not just the season. It's kind of like a year-round thing, but recognizing that this can be a particularly stressful time.
Yeah.
So I want to start with two things. One is if you and the listeners can just stop and think, like, as you're getting ready for the holiday season, what kinds of things come up both in your body? Like, where do you feel it in your body? If you just take like just a moment to like sit with yourself, feel your body. When you think about the holidays, where does it come up in your body?
I think chest.
Yeah.
I mean, not just because you're gesturing your chest right now,
I am.
but actually, even if I hadn't seen you do that, I think, yeah.
Yeah, chest. And that can be, and then sitting with like, okay, what kind of feeling? Is that a tight feeling? Is it a warm feeling? What does that feel like for you?
The thing that came up for me is thinking of like lots of parties and events to go to where I'm like, oh, another thing.
Yeah.
And so that has a little bit of that tightness.
100%, right? So there's like this anticipation, there's excitement and there's stress with that, right? So it can cause this tightness. And so the reason I like to do that is for us to gain awareness of like when we hear something that it can impact how our body feels it and where we feel it in our body. So we talk a lot about cognitive behavioral therapy, and you said, a lot of researchers will not talk about how it impacts the body. And so CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, is the second wave of behaviorism, right? So behavioral therapy is kind of very strict, like Pavlov, right? Is like, I ring a bell and then all of a sudden the dog salivates because it knows it's going to be getting food, right? It's like
stimulus response.
Stimulus response, very quick connection. Cognitive behavioral saying like, oh, but there's also some thoughts that come along with that, right? Now, what we're talking about today is like, absolutely, the behavior part is also part of our body. It's the thing that we're doing, the thing that's the action part of it. The third wave of this whole area is third wave CBT. And this is really mindfulness, right? And it's talking about like, ACT, which is acceptance and commitment therapy and other mindfulness practices, is really saying that this is also part of how we embody cognitions and behaviors and how it impacts our body, and that we have to tend to our body as well. So one of the things that I always like to do with folks when I'm talking about mindfulness, when I'm talking about mind-body connection, I do this with my kids, I do it with adults and everyone in between, is Dan Siegel's hand model of the brain. So I'm just going to describe it with you. If you take your hand and you make a 4, and then you close the fingers over the top. He would like to say
you're holding the thumb inside.
You're holding the thumb on the
listeners.
inside. This is a handy model of the brain because it's your hand, so it's handy.
Kind of a little bit looks like the shape of the brain, where the knuckles would like be the prefrontal cortex.
Exactly. Yep. So the knuckles, or the front part of your hand, would be the part right behind your forehead, which was the prefrontal cortex. Now, the prefrontal cortex is responsible for all of the things that's called executive functioning, right? So executive functioning helps us with regulation. It helps us remain calm. It helps us with impulse control. It helps us with thinking, problem solving, doing things in the right order. With my kids, I'll say, so it helps us remember that we put our socks on before we put our shoes on, right? Because the other way around ends up with soggy socks, and nobody likes soggy socks, right? It helps us with making sense of things, right? So like we actually are better able, again, problem solving and thinking through and being able to understand what is right, what is wrong, what makes sense and what doesn't. Again, with my kids, I will talk about how we have a big fish tank in the lobby of the clinic that I work at. And I said, if we had the fish tank in here, we know that the fishies aren't going to jump outside of the fish tank and start walking around and talking to us, right? Like that's this part of the brain, helps us make sense of things. And again, that impulse control, right? Helps us to stop ourselves before we do something impulsive. Now, the thumb part, if we open our hands, we keep our hands still formed in a 4. The thumb part really represents the amygdala area. And the amygdala is the feeling center, right? And so with my kids, I talk about inside out, right? Like this is headquarters and inside out, right? This is where all of the feelings, where all of your emotions live, your feeling center. And really the science behind it is that when our feelings and emotions are activated, we get a flood of all the chemicals that produce all of our emotions, right?
In your brain and into your body.
Right, exactly. In our brain and in our body. And what happens is that receptors from the amygdala and this part of our brain, the limbic system, to the prefrontal cortex actually shut down, which means all of those chemicals kind of stay in that area longer, which means and Dan Siegel's hand model of the brain, we flip our lid. So the fingers go up and we're kind of being run on our base instincts, being run by our limbic system.
You don't have that prefrontal cortex.
Our prefrontal cortex has shut off, essentially, right? Because the receptors from the limbic system to the prefrontal cortex have shut down, the prefrontal cortex is operating on very low connectivity to your body, right? meaning we then are reacting on emotion rather than our regulated and wise mind, right?
And not being our best selves.
Being our best
selves requires that engagement of the prefrontal cortex.
Exactly.
Executive function.
Exactly. The prefrontal cortex and the executive function helps us stay regulated and in our wise and calm state in mind. So when we have flipped our lid, what that does is then we start to feel it in our body, right? Physically, so we feel it in our body two ways. Like I say to my kids, we feel it in our body two ways. One is how we feel it inside our body. So we might feel butterflies in our stomach. We might feel upset to our stomach. One of my kids says, I feel barfy, right? Like I feel like I'm gonna throw up, right? We might feel a heart rate increasing. We might feel sweaty or shaky or a headache. I tend to feel like my ears get really hot.
Yeah, you mentioned that before.
Yeah, my ears get really hot, and that's kind of a cue for me, like, oh, what's going on for me? And so that's one way that our body feels it when we have kind of flipped our lid. We also know that it goes the other way around. This is how the mind-body connection works. Our emotions impact our body, but our body also impacts our emotions. So, for instance, have you ever been sick and throwing up and happy at the same time?
No.
Right. You might feel relieved. You might feel happy afterwards, but it's really hard to do it at the same time. So when we're sick or when there's something going on with us physically, it's also going to impact our mood and our feelings, right? How we're feeling. So our job is now to figure out, like, how do we regulate ourselves? Meaning, how do we get our fingers, our prefrontal cortex back online? How do we close the lid?
Mindfulness.
Yes. And so, absolutely, one of the many ways.
Take a deep breath.
Yes, taking deep breaths. So there are lots of ways in which we do that. But again, because our body and our mind are so connected, we have to think about both and. Again, diverse joy bingo, both and, right? And so Bessel van der Kolk, I can always forget his name. Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote Body Keeps the Score, talks a lot about this, how both our joy and our pain resides in our body. And we have to adjust and we have to tend to our body in order to find that place of wholeness, wellness, and regulation, right? And so his whole book is all about how we hold trauma, how we hold things in our body. And oftentimes we will feel it in our body before we even have the thoughts or the cognitions or the things to describe what's going on, right? Like I said, I might feel my ears start to burn. Something's going on in my body that I need to tend to. And so another thing that happens are the ways in which we talk about how to regulate. And it really comes out of a lot of the trauma research is polyvagal theory. Now, let me just be very clear that I am no expert in polyvagal theory. But essentially what it talks about is, most people know fight or flight, fight, freeze, freak out, right? You've heard that term before. So what it really talks about is these kind of three levels of how our vagus and parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system works. And so the sympathetic is really our fight or flight state. It's kind of most activated, most flipped lid, flipped brain state, dysregulated state, right? We're in this like activated fight or flight. Then we have the dorsal vagal, which is the freeze and kind of shut down state. And then what we're really trying to get to is the ventral vagal, which is that parasympathetic state, which is rest and digest. It is our safety, calm state. And all of this is part of, again, that mind-body connection, that we are feeling safe and calm and regulated when we can have our mind and our body most connected.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So I have lots of ideas and things that I'd love to share with everybody about how we can keep ourselves regulated. And I have 5 simple steps and 5 simple things that you can do on a regular basis to do just that. And we can talk about them more after the break.
All right. That sounds wonderful. All right. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back from break. One last little bit on our main discussion topic. So a wonderful psychologist, social psychologist like me, who I absolutely adore, Professor Wendy Berry-Mendez. She's a really great person and does amazing research. And she does a lot on kind of approach and avoidance and the sympathetic, parasympathetic stuff. And I remember in a talk that she gave, talking about how some of these things work with your body. And one of the things that she said was, when you're in that kind of highly anxious state, what your nervous system does is it kind of redirects your blood into your body. So into your major organs to kind of keep them running nicely, keeps that high heart rate or things like that, which means it draws blood out of like your extremities, your hands and your feet. Yeah. And so people will get cold hands when their anxiety goes up. And so when she had grad students who would be about to give a presentation, she didn't want them to be highly anxious. And they started learning that she would grab their hands and feel if their hands were cold or warm.
That's so funny.
And also getting into what you're about to talk about, how to deal with these things, eating can help with this a bit, because part of what can fuel your anxiety is if your body feels like it doesn't have enough resources to deal with a threat. But if you have a full stomach, your body feels like, oh, I've got resources and it can help. What Amber's about to share is a new segment, except it's not really a new segment because it's something that Amber's done throughout the time we've had the podcast. But we thought as the podcast continues to evolve and we're thinking about things, Amber, from her background as a clinical psychologist, has always shared coping skills, wellness skills, life skills related to that. But we never had a special segment for it. And we do our habit breaking skills every episode. So we're going to start doing this kind of wellness thing. Maybe not every episode, but whenever we have something or Amber has something to share. Yeah. So first ever wellness skills segment. Amber, you had some stuff to share about how to kind of deal with this when anxiety, is it anxiety specific or any?
It's really, I'm sure anxiety, but it is anytime that we need to center ourselves, anytime that we need to create a mind-body connection. I think anxiety is the most clear evidence of need for it, right? We feel it the most in our body, most quickly recognizable in our body, but we see it in depression and we see it again in trauma. We also see it when we're overly excited too, right? Like it's not just quote unquote negative emotions and things. We feel it when we're overexcited as well.
I was going to say some of the flip your lid stuff you were talking about reminded me of mania and bipolar disorder. So, people who are having a manic episode, they feel great, but they're making bad choices.
Exactly. Yeah. They have lost connection to their prefrontal cortex, right? The impulse control is completely gone. And so, this is not just an anxiety, depression, stress related thing. Those are just tend to be the ones that we connect to or more quickly recognize our body symptoms than we do for other things.
And I think and I'm speaking a little outside my expertise, so don't repeat this without checking it yourselves, listeners. But I think that's also a bit more in Western cultures, the kind of anxiety thing. So one of my other professors that I worked with, Yuri Miyamoto, studied kind of cultural psychology. And in Western cultures like the US, when you're happy, most Westerners tend to want to keep being happy. They want to maintain that level of happiness. Yeah. Whereas in Eastern cultures, not all, but some, including Japan specifically, people see that as a state of activation that they want to kind of come back down from. So it's about recentering. You don't want to maintain that super high happy state because that's not kind of the goal in a lot of kind of Eastern psychology. Cultures.
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, I think what it's speaking to is a regulated state, right?
Correct.
And again, DBT, so dialectical behavioral therapy. They'll talk about the wise mind, which I kind of alluded to earlier. The wise mind is really this idea of a regulated state, right? Where I have my prefrontal cortex is online. It's connected to my limbic system. It's all of those things together. It doesn't mean that we're not experiencing joy, that we're not experiencing those things, but it isn't to a place where it's an unhealthy level, right? Because when we have sustained activation, whether that's joy or stress or trauma or whatever else, we are over-activating our adrenal glands and our adrenal system and pumping cortisol and pumping dopamine and pumping these things into our system.
Crash, right?
And we're going to crash. It's not sustainable. So being able to find, again, I talk about this with my kids, is that we have all of our feelings. We should have all of our feelings. We need to feel all of our feelings. And we need to feel it in such a way that we can still maintain control. We need to be able to stay connected to ourself and our body.
Who you are, your best self.
Our best self. Absolutely. So
how do we do that? What's our skill?
So the skill that I'm going to talk today is I love a good acronym and ways I find every possible way to create an acronym. And so today I'm just going to share 5 very quick mindfulness strategies. And since this is our cozy holiday episode, I want you to think of these as like little mini stocking stuffers for your for your systems, for your nervous system, ways in which you can calm your system down, especially as we're going through the holiday season, but really at any time of life. And this is a way that you can shine, even when things are dark and dim through the holidays. So the acronym is SHINE. And the first one is your senses. So I really like to do the 5 senses activity. So what happens when we get really activated, particularly in anxiety, is that we get really stuck in our head, right? We get stuck in our cognitions. We get stuck in ruminating on our thoughts. And when we're stuck kind of in our thoughts and in our mind, we have lost connection to the here and now. We've lost connection to our body because we're just super heady, right?
Kind of like in the movie Inside Out 2, when anxiety is just 100%. Running out of control.
Exactly. Thank you. See, I didn't even have to mention it. I talk about it all the time, right? In Inside Out 2, she's literally like this little storm and all of the other feelings are trying to do it. And poor little Riley's just sitting there having like a panic attack, right? Stuck in her mind, not in her body.
So the senses.
So we want to engage all of our senses so that we can kind of bring ourselves back into feeling our body. So you start, it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you start with 5 things that you can see. So the red bulbs, the green tablecloth, the tree mug, your overalls, right? The plant. So 5 things you can see, 4 things that you can feel and touch and kind of feel them as you're doing it. The tablecloth, the metal of the microphone, this clipboard, the mug, 4 things that you can feel. 3 things that you can hear, and you have to kind of settle yourself enough to like listen around you. Sometimes you're in a quiet space and you gotta like, what am I hearing, right? Sometimes it's just the vents, like a light breeze, somebody in the next room. Then it's 2 things that you can smell. So that can be a little hard, but it's just, again, centering yourself to really pay attention, like, what am I smelling right now?
Just like dust or
sometimes I always recommend to my kids, like, you can smell like your shirt or your hair or your hands. I often recommend keeping like aromatherapy scented lotion on hand that you can kind of put on your hands. And that aromatherapy really activates your system and helps to calm that vagus nerve down, right? Helps pull us back into that parasympathetic system. And the last is something that you can taste, right? So sometimes that's just spit, right? It's something stale. Maybe it's a remnant of something that you ate earlier. Maybe it's something that you have in front of you. I'll often recommend having like some Tic Tacs or mints or gum, something sour, something that you can put in and you can kind of just, or chocolates. There's something that you can put in your mouth and then just taste and pay attention to the taste. Again, what this does is it pulls you back into your body and into the here and now versus being stuck in your mind. H stands for hum. So humming or singing is another, so in my grandmother's hands, Riesma, if I'm looking at our, if I'm going to double check last name.
What is grandmother's hands?
My grandmother's hands. No, it's another book. It's similar. It's a book similar to The Body Keeps a Score. It talks a lot about the embodiment of trauma. Oh, yes. Thank you. Menachem. Yes, Menachem. Riesma Menachem. Yes. Excellent book. It really talks about the embodiment from a BIPOC perspective specifically, but he talks a lot about this, the humming, the motion, the feeling, the vibration in your body, how that can calm, again, your vagus nerve and your system. So humming just for like 30 seconds and co-regulating with somebody else. So like if you and I were to hum together, even just a singular note creates connection, but we're also co-regulating, meaning I'm borrowing, if I'm stressed out, I'm borrowing from your nervous system and our connection to regulate each other.
Well, and I don't know this work very well, but that reminds me of kind of Buddhist meditation where 100%. There's like the and there's 100%. Even more, there's another word for it, but they can get into this really deep, like sternum vibrating hum. Yes. Which I'm guessing is connected to this.
That's connected to this. Yeah. Absolutely. So the humming, the resonating, so that can be humming, it can be singing. So with the parents of my kids, I'll talk about singing together, hold them while you're singing, because then you can share the vibrations. Yeah, exactly. So hum. So senses, humming. I is inner joy. So of course I have to bring like a little joy in. But this is a gratefulness practice, right? And it's going through, it's kind of like what I mentioned at the very beginning, where it's like, where do you feel this in your body? Oh. But if you just take a moment of like, where am I feeling joy in my body? Even a micro recognition of, where am I feeling joy? How am I feeling joy? In what thing am I feeling joy? So it's a gratitude practice.
And I think you've talked about this long ago, maybe first season, like your glasses.
Right.
You always wear something that when you see yourself in the mirror, it brings you just a little bit of joy.
Micro moments of joy. And so finding that moment of like, what is my micro moment of joy? Where is my inner joy coming from in this moment, right? Connecting to that. N is notice colors. So there are two ways that you can do this. This is another kind of grounding, like the senses, another grounding exercise. There are two ways that you can do this. One is going on a color walk, which I absolutely recommend because the research around connection to nature and the mind-body connection is astounding. As low as 90 seconds to 5 minutes can absolutely regulate your system and improves overall health and wellness and sense of well-being. Even VR, virtual green spaces, can help improve your overall well-being. They've done all these studies on inmate populations where they've exposed them to just greenery on the outside of prisons or to virtual reality green spaces, and that helps their overall mood, well-being, quality of life. So I always recommend a walk because that helps get you outside and gets you that nature space as well. But you can also do it as a pause. So what you do is you choose a color and then all you're doing is you're noticing the color. So if we chose red, I'd say your red overalls, the red on Stitch's mug, the red bulbs here, the red in my mug, the Santa sack, the red on my glasses, on my pajamas, and all of these places. And we just take a moment to kind of just look around and notice all of the red things in our space. So if you're going on a walk, Red is the color. You just kind of notice every red thing.
I spy something red.
Yes, I spy with my little eye, right? Something red, right? And you're just
so
looking
that kind
for
of matches the 5 things you can see,
yes.
but it's still different because you're coming at it from a different angle.
Right, exactly. It's narrowing it a little bit so that you're just focusing and noticing on one thing. So it's still attentional. It's bringing your attention to something else, bringing you back into the here and now, into the present moment, and noticing what's around you. And then E. So the last one is E, and that is exhale. So like movie Waiting to Exhale. So exhaling, that really helps us. This is the breathing or breath practice, right? So taking deep breaths. Everybody talks about just take a deep breath, and people kind of brush it off because it feels really woo-woo or very simple. But it works in our system, right? It absolutely helps to engage our parasympathetic nervous system and helps us regulate and calm down. So my favorite one, and reduces cortisol levels, and cortisol being related to stress and the stress hormone, right? So I'm going to teach you my favorite one. Again, I teach it to my kids and I teach it to the adults all alike. And what it is called a volcano breath. Okay. So what you do is you take your hands like you're in a praying motion, and then you're going to take a deep breath in through your nose and move your hands all the way up to a tree pose. Hold it there for a few seconds, and then blow out, and hands, out through your mouth, and hands
describe
going
it for
down.
The listeners, starting with your hands in a prayer position in front of your chest, and then what she called tree poses, up,
hands all the way up
stretching
above,
your
head,
and then you break them out.
Stretch and out. Then hands down as if the lava is coming out of the volcano.
So you're pushing the lava up and then out.
Yep. So in through your nose, hold, and then out through your mouth, and your hands come down. The best thing with that is that it's giving you the oxygen, it's engaging the parasympathetic nervous system, or your parasympathetic system, and it is slowing your heart rate, it's slowing your breathing. And the reason I like the volcano breath is that it also helps engage relaxing your muscles too. Because when we are stressed out, when we're anxious, we hold it in our body and we feel it in our muscles. This is why we like to get massages when we're stressed out, right? Yeah. Is because we hold the tension in our body. So volcano breath helps us move and stretch out our muscles while also getting a good deep breath in. So senses, hum, inner joy, notice colors, and exhale. So
I like it. Shine. Everybody shine.
Shine your way through the season and let them be your little nervous system stocking stuffers this season.
And year round.
And year round, yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I'm definitely going to keep that in mind. So useful. All right. So next we have some story time, and our stories kind of relate to some of what we've been talking about. So Amber, you had a short negative story that you were going to share.
Well, again, it related to the recognizing our body, right? Is a couple episodes ago in the end of season 2, we talked about pet to threat, which we've mentioned a couple of times already this season. And I started realizing every time I saw this person's name show up,
the person who's kind of the source of pet to threat,
source of my pet to threat situations. Every time I saw their name come up on my phone, on social media, the idea that I could be in the room with this person, all of a sudden I caught myself like holding my breath. And feeling like tight in my chest or feeling shaky. And I was like, man, what's going on? And I had to like take the couple steps back and ask myself, like, what is this? And I realized like it's really easy for me prior to just, whatever. Oh, I forgot to breathe for a second or whatever it was, to brush it off. And then I started to realize like, oh, this is my body's reaction to this person. This is the anxiety that's coming up. This is remnants of trauma that are popping up, and I'm holding it in my body. And I have to, now that I'm aware of it, make decisions around what that means around taking care of myself and reconnecting with my body and not putting it in a place where it feels danger.
So listening to what your body's telling you.
Absolutely.
And then making choices to be healthy.
Absolutely.
And take care of yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
That's good. I mean, it is our negative story, but it is kind of also a positive story because you realized what was happening and made a positive change.
Yeah.
So that's
I'm working on making those changes.
Oh, okay. So in progress.
In progress. Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, then I had the officially positive story. So some of what we talked about today, like when you flip your lid, to use that analogy, when I was an undergraduate in college, maybe a junior, and I was working full time at Home Depot and my psychology major, I learned about kind of losing your ability to regulate when you're, overly excited or tired or all these kinds of things. And especially in the context of bias, which, ended up being what I study and what we talk about a lot on this podcast. When you lose that kind of regulatory ability, when you flip your lid, you tend to you will show more bias because you don't have that kind of regulatory stuff in place. And that was like a big thing for me. I was like, oh man, like that's how this works. And so one day I was late for work and I was literally running to get to my workplace on time. And I lived in Florida. So this was in Florida heat I was sweaty and I was exhausted and I was aggravated because I was late. And I remember thinking like, oh, that thing I just learned in class, like if I encountered someone right now, I'd be especially likely to express bias.
Yeah, that's good.
So it's the positive story. Like I didn't then express bias or anything. I wasn't really in a situation for it, but having learned that fact, that awareness, and we talk about awareness skills all the time, became a cue for control is what we talk about it. So when I notice that I'm in an agitated state or tired or short on time, I always kind of have my antenna go up. Like right now is the time when I might be more likely to show bias, more likely to make bad, rash decisions. And I use that now I can use it to shine and be like, oh, maybe this is a chance to shine. But recognizing that maybe I'm not going to be my quote unquote best self because that executive function is depleted or not connected in the same way.
Absolutely. It reminds me of, so like you said, like, oh, I'm running late or those things that there's also this acronym HALTS. I don't know if you've heard of it before, but those states that we might be more quickly activated in a dysregulated state is hungry, angry, lonely, late, tired, or surprised. So any of those times, we are just already going to be
it's like a Snickers commercial, right?
Like, you're not yourself when you're hungry. Exactly. And that's true, right?
Yeah.
You're not. Your body is not, like you were saying earlier.
Is when bias is going to be more likely.
Exactly. So halts can help you. Also raise awareness of like, when might I be more likely to express these things? Any of those times.
Yeah. Very cool. Two acronyms for everyone today.
Yeah. Like I said, I've always got an acronym on hand.
All right. Well, we're going to take our last break and then be back with question time. Woo. Welcome back. All right. So now it's question time. Yeah. So our question kind of ties back to what we've been discussing. So we were talking about this kind of mind-body connection for everyone, for people in general. But in addition to the joy part of the podcast, there's the diversity part of the podcast.
Right.
So are there special concerns when we're talking about this mind-body connection for members of stigmatized groups, for folks of color, LGBTQ plus folks, people with disabilities, and so on that might have special or additional concerns?
Absolutely. So when we're thinking about, I mentioned several times about racial battle fatigue. So these kind of building of microaggressions, and whether that's racial or that's other kind of minoritized or stigmatized identity marker, things, whether that's real, perceived, or community-oriented. We're talking about intergenerational trauma, all of these things.
Even just concern that bias might happen because you know it exists and you're thinking about it too
Going
much.
out into spaces with an uncertainty, right? Yeah. Then causes an activation of your system and contributes to what's considered the allostatic load, right? So the allostatic load is this kind of wear and tear on our system, the activation of pumping out cortisol into our bodies. And so this also leads to worse health outcomes as well, right?
Yeah. So long-term and
short-term. And so yes, for minoritized and marginalized groups, the constant piece is the uncertainty around spaces, sense of safety, experiencing of microaggressions towards a part of their identity. All of those things contribute to a sense of like ongoing stress, which is decreasing their mind-body connection and pumping in stress hormones that then can lead to actually worse health outcomes as well as mental health outcomes too.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, bad that it happens,
it was not great, but
good answer
true.
To the question.
Thank you.
Yes, very good. Sorry. But and then some of those coping, like the shine, can be especially useful for them.
Absolutely. Yep. And going into the awareness of recognizing like, hey, I'm about to step into a space that I know is activating for me. How can I go in? And I didn't talk about this before, but the shine really is kind of a preventative measure, right? Mind-body connection, mindfulness, all of those things can be preventative. I'm going in with the awareness, knowing that when I'm around these folks, that my family, when I'm around or in this space, I might be activated in this way. It might cause me to be hungry, angry, lonely, late, tired, distressed, or surprised, right? And how can I preventatively and intentionally make sure that I'm regulating my system into those spaces so that we can mitigate any responses, harmful responses that can come from that allostatic load, that can come from stress load that can come from being a minoritized group.
All right.
Yeah. So as we just close out our episode, Will, what is the habit breaking skill that we're talking about today?
All right. So our habit breaking skill this month is something called norm enforcement. So it really builds on what we talked about, especially the last episode. We always or often talk about stereotypes and biases as, being assumptions related to what someone's going to be like. Like people maybe make an assumption that a Black person is going to be athletic or a good singer, or that an assumption that maybe women are going to be kind of loving and nurturing. Men are going to be good leaders. Maybe that's another stereotype. So we have these stereotypes that give us expectations about what people are like based on their group statuses, but they tend to become norms. So we tend to think we have those expectations because that's the way the world should be. Not necessarily consciously, as with a lot of what we talk about. It can be unintentional. But one of the things that happens is when someone violates a norm, we get aggravated and frustrated about that. It relates to what we were talking about last episode with our habits getting disrupted. We get these aggravated, frustrated feelings. So norm enforcement, to break those two words apart. So you have these norms very often that come from stereotypes. And when someone violates them, you try to enforce the norm. So for instance, in workplaces, if there are women who are assertive, putting forward their ideas, maybe trying to take leadership roles, that violates the kind of norm, the way things have always been, or we think they've always been, saying that women aren't in leader roles. They're supposed to be supporters rather than leaders, is how a lot of folks talk about it. And so the women who are kind of pushing forward and maybe engaging in behaviors that get praised when men do them, we tend to not like them as much. And people will do things maybe to sabotage them, to put them in their place, so to speak. They're trying to enforce the norm. So in terms of this being a skill, what I really want folks to do is kind of start, again, tune into those frustrated, aggravated feelings and say like, well, where are these coming from? Are they coming from what the person doing actually being wrong or something they shouldn't be be doing?
Right.
Or could it be that they're violating a norm and I haven't examined that norm in myself yet, or haven't caught that yet? And I mostly talk about this in terms of norms related to stereotypes, of course, because I'm a stereotyping researcher.
Right.
But it can be other kinds of norms as well. Right. In science domains, a way we see this a lot as well is in communication style. So a lot of areas of science have had a historic, kind of very assertive, very aggressive communication style where two people are debating their scientific ideas.
Right.
Some people will call that a very male or stereotypically male communication style. And then people who are maybe a little quieter or less likely to be aggressive in that way, their ideas don't get listened to. And so there are norms in science groups, science labs, work groups, where only the people who are being loud and in your face, only their ideas get attention. And that's another place where this can happen. The person who's not speaking up, they're not living up to the norm of this workplace.
Yeah, and that can happen in academic systems too. I saw that happen a lot, where faculty or teachers would say, oh, this person's not engaged because they're not speaking out loud a lot. And I was like, but they're thoughtful in their discussions. They're talking in their small groups. Like, let's rethink some of these norms that we're expecting. So it shows up in lots of ways.
Yes, absolutely. All these kinds of norms. One other I talk about sometimes, I think we might have mentioned this with Nikki once, past guest Nikki Vandermeulen. So imagine that you're talking with someone who uses a assistive device or maybe a translator, if we're talking about across languages. It necessarily makes you have to go slower. It interrupts your typical flow.
Right.
That's another kind of habit disruption. Yeah. Your normal way of talking has to get disrupted. It will give you aggravated and frustrated feelings. Yeah. And so understanding, disruption gives those feelings. If you can kind of recognize that, maybe you shine a little bit to reduce that, will stop you from maybe lashing out at that person when it's really not something they're doing wrong. It's just your habit disruption giving you those feelings.
Such a great example. I have a friend, I think I've mentioned her before, but Alette Kubel-Temple, and she has CP, and she talks about having a CP accent and that it requires people to slow down and pay attention a little bit more, but that's
cerebral
not
palsy.
Cerebral palsy, yep. That it forces folks to slow down and pay attention a little bit more, but it's no different than any other accent, but it can bring up those frustrated feelings. Absolutely. That does force us to pay attention to the cues, find ways to regulate, shine our way through it.
Yeah. Awesome. One last little bit, and then we'll be on the recommendation. We also like it when people conform to norms.
Right.
And so sometimes those folks get praised more. We think they're doing better at their jobs. Right. Kind of like what you said with students, maybe the ones speaking up. Yeah. Oh, they're good. They're
great.
Engaged.
They're so engaged.
They talk
so smart.
all the time.
Yeah.
But maybe you're not listening to what they're saying. You just notice they're talking a lot.
You just notice
Potentially.
Right.
Accusing anyone specifically. So it can also be that positive side, which is not net positive for your educational outcomes, if that's the context we're talking about, your scientific outcomes. If you're listening to the loudest people, it doesn't mean they're the most correct.
Absolutely true. Absolutely.
So finding ways
you can be loud and confident and very wrong.
Very much so. So think about that, folks. And as always, send in your examples on diversejoy.com, your questions. I should have said that during the question segment. So, Amber, what is your joyful recommendation this month?
It's our holiday season. So, and I've shared before that I love my Christmas and holiday movies. So I thought I would share one of my favorites, which is Jingle, Jangle. It's on Jingle, Jangle. It is a Black-centered cast, and it is kind of Afrofuturistic, and also it's got a little but it's also set in I'm not even sure what year it's set in, but it is beautiful. It's a musical, and it's a story about a toy maker and his family, and how his design gets stolen, and he kind of loses his spark, but his grandkids bring his spark and joy back to toy making, and it's just beautiful. It's got Forrest Whitaker, Felicia Rashad, Keegan-Michael Key. It's on Netflix.
Heavy hitters.
Yeah. It's amazing. The little toy comes to life. It's lovely. But I love that this is just like a Christmas holiday movie that has a Black-centered cast, which there are not a whole lot of them. Some other ones that I really like are This Christmas, which also has some heavy hitters like Idris Elba and Regina King, Loretta Devine. I also like Last Christmas with Queen Latifah and LL Cool J. But there aren't a whole lot of Christmas. Oh, Preacher's Wife. With Whitney Houston, right? So like there aren't a whole lot of Black-centered cast Christmas movies or holiday movies. And so every year I really like to watch these. But Jingle Jangle is so beautiful. The cinematography, the music, it's at the choreography, it's super fun. So I definitely recommend y'all go and watch it.
I have not seen that yet.
Yeah, so it's a good one. Absolutely.
So last little mini segment that we're doing temporarily for a little while is about my book.
Yeah.
So my book, Overcoming Bias Habits, available to order now. Go order it. We just want to share another one of my endorsements. Mm-hmm. So this endorsement is from Professor J. Bradford DeLong. He's an economics professor. He's an author of a best-selling book called Slouching Toward Utopia. He's at UC Berkeley. My book is being published by University of California Press, and he's on their editorial board, and read and recommended my book to be published after it got peer reviewed. Yeah. And Amber will read his endorsement.
Yeah, and I'm reading the sentence that they pulled, but this is just one sentence pulled from like a page long of beautiful rave review of Will's book. So he says, presents a uniquely actionable framework for readers who want to confront bias, not with slogans or shame, but with science-backed tools that work. Aww. It's lovely. And again, he did not have enough to say. I think he had a whole page of beautiful things to say about the book and how useful and amazing it is. So absolutely order yours today.
Overcoming Bias Habits.
That's right.
The title of the book. I'm Dr. William Cox.
And I'm Dr. Amber Nelson.
Diverse Joy is produced by Eric Roman Vining with music by Jay Arner. Follow us at Diverse Joy on most social media platforms for extra content. If you enjoy the show, help us reach more people by leaving 5-star reviews or by recommending it personally. Word of mouth accounts for 70% of how people find new podcasts. New episodes release the first Wednesday of every month. Watch us on YouTube, listen in any podcasting app, or check us out at diversejoy.com, where you can also find additional diversity education resources, buy some incredible merchandise, or make a donation to support the show. Diverse Joy is the official podcast of Inequity Agents of Change, a nonprofit devoted to evidence-based approaches to reduce bias, create inclusion, and promote equity. All that good Jedi work. Learn more at biashabit.com. Thank you for joining us. Now, go find your joy.
Bye.